Good morning, everyone. Looks like folks are trickling in, but we'll get the ball rolling. We've got 45 minutes. This session's going to talk about the role of autonomy and robotics and labor and how all of that comes together in organics. My name is Matthew Hoffman. I'm the general partner of Reservoir Ventures. We're a agricultural technology investor and incubator with working farms in Salinas, Sonoma, and on the horizon in Merced, and a range of different crops. So I'll introduce the panelists, and they're going to give everybody a thorough introduction themselves. But in my mind, organics is a great place to talk about autonomy and robotics. Do you have a clicker? I do not have a clicker.
I just want to do one quick housekeeping thing. Can you progress this? Yeah. So we have translation services, and it will do captioning of this and also do Spanish translation. So if you are in need of that, you can scan this and it'll appear on your phone.
Thank you.
Proceed. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Autonomy, robotics, big opportunity for labor. Arguably, organics has larger labor obstacles than conventional farming, and so I think it's a fitting discussion. And organics have their own set of labor needs. Economics for growers are quite a bit different, and so are the cultural and farming practices. And so I think organics does deserve its own platform when you talk about the role and how autonomy fits into harvest and non-harvest work. Okay. So Nishan and I go way back from my time at Driscoll, so it's fun to be here with you again today. Nishan knows berries very well. Nishan's the Vice President of Operations for Baja, Canada, and the United States for Driscoll's. Kristen, I wish I knew what you know about vegetables and leafy greens. As the president of J.V. Smith, this is one thing that I need to learn a lot about in my role at Reservoir, so look forward to learning from you. Tim, you're the founder and CEO of Agtonomy, one of the most interesting companies working with autonomy in tractors, and you guys have really showed the rest of us how to do it, and so you're a leader in your field. And you and I can connect on wine grapes because that's my family's history, and that's something that you do and you're passionate about. So we'll just get going with some storytelling. I think each of you guys have some ideas and some stories from the field you can talk about, thanks, around what has worked. Go ahead and get into the nitty-gritty about what didn't work, and around autonomy, ag tech, in your respective crops. And Kristen, why don't you kick it off?
Well, is this on?
No.
Oh, I've turned it. Okay.
What's worked for us is honestly when we've worked very closely with the company as they develop the equipment, that's been, or if it was developed really closely with a farmer, not necessarily us. That's been when we've been able to get the machines working. And what comes most to mind is our thinning machines. So we started with the Agmatronics, and that took a lot of work. Like we had a person kind of assigned to them who was making them work in our fields, and giving the feedback to the engineers and having them improve the product. And they were taking that feedback and working with us to make those go. And then more recently, we've done the same thing with Nico Robotics. And it was, from the beginning with Nico, working with them very closely. They actually had one idea for their cameras. They were going to try to put them on a spray rig. And Robert Barnum, who does a lot of this stuff for us, he worked really closely with the original thinning machines. He kind of told them that's not really going to work. Like they're just not going to be able to go fast enough. Like those machines go faster than those cameras could keep up. So it would end up slowing everything down. And so that's when they started talking about thinning, and then getting into them to do add the AI component into thinning. And now we absolutely love those machines. And they have been able to get into those fields that we haven't been able to get into before. So what's worked for us is working very closely in the development of things and having a group that is willing to work very, very closely with us.
Is anybody here familiar with Nico Robotics? Okay, just a few people. So for a little context, if you imagine a spray boom with some cameras that are hooked up to some computers and some models that are able to process that data, you know when you should spray and when you shouldn't based on the presence or absence of a plant, right? That plant could be a weed, you do want to spray. That plant could be a crop, you don't want to spray if that's an herbicide. And so there's so many applications of this with like 20 to 40% efficiencies in crop sprays and pesticide applications, or precision thinning, right, which I believe is a manual activity done in organics. Mm-hmm. Yep, the thinning. Yeah. Do you have any statistics on the labor savings with Nico on thinning?
I'd have to double check my numbers, but I think we put, our regular budget is around $200 an acre for thinning if we're using a crew. But if we're doing one of our machines, we're looking at closer to like 100 to 150. So.
Nishan, how about you? Some stories from the field on where technology worked and where it hasn't?
Yeah, maybe I can turn on my mic. Can you hear me? Yeah. Maybe I'll start just by sharing a little bit about myself also. So I lead Driscoll's production function, which really means that I work with the independent growers that farm all the berries that Driscoll's sells. And so what that means is I'm really just an employee of Driscoll's. I know there's some farmers in the room, and those are the people that our team is working with that have their own businesses, growing Driscoll's varieties in their own way on their own farm, making their own decisions on how to invest. Collectively, all of us are working towards just delighting the consumer with fresh berries that they're going to love, and that's what makes everything go. And so we're very aligned on that effort. The reality is these growers, the many independent growers that we work with, are doing the farming and harvesting themselves. And so really that for them is their life, and that means, and in many cases it is multi-generational. There are a lot of new generations in the business, second generations or third, some cases more than that, and they know that without innovating, that future is not secured, and really the way to keep moving forward is to innovate. We really believe in the demand. Organics is going to continue to grow if we continue to deliver that eating experience that people love, and we're really confident in that. But the costs are going up as well, without any question, and so innovation just has to happen. So there's an incredible pull from these family farmers that I get the opportunity, and my team gets the opportunity to work alongside them. And so what I'm sharing is really the experiences that I've seen from them as we all try to figure out how to take the next step forward. In berries, and I think this is true in some specialty crops, certainly in berries, the harvest labor is a huge portion of the total cost of producing a crate of berries. It's half the cost or more than half the cost in a lot of cases. And then there's a bucket of additional labor cost, which is made up of a number of non-harvest or farming activities that are pretty varied. And then finally, there's input costs as well. And so solving for that equation with automation is really challenging. It has been really challenging. I think it continues to be, but there's so much pull and so much interest in doing it that we'll continue to focus on it. And certainly, I think when we think about that, in berries, there's the opportunity to reduce costs. That's one. Can you reduce the labor cost? Very hard to do in harvest labor. That's been something that has been approached. It'll continue to be approached. I look forward to the day that that happens. That's not our current reality and not in the next couple of years either. There's a way to reduce the labor of non-harvest activities, which is one opportunity. You could reduce the inputs and the total amount and cost of inputs. And then the last thing you could do to create value is where I see the most feasibility, which is increase the yield. And so in organics and berries, our growers have a yield disadvantage that'll range. It'll vary by deal, but it can range between maybe 15% lower to a conventional yield in our very best cases to 40% lower in a number of cases, and then outliers where an average yield's even less than 40% lower than the conventional yield. And so if you can increase that yield without increasing those labor or input costs, you can really get onto something quickly. And with a lack of available labor in the fields and with more pressure on inputs, automation can be a really big solution for that. And in a lot of cases, that'll just keep it cost neutral, but it'll enable our growers to increase their yield by even 2% can make that payoff work, or 5% really starts giving you multiple thousands of dollars per acre of advantage. And so that's really where there's a lot of focus. I know I took up a lot of time with that, but I really believe, I've seen the same experience that you've had. In order for these to be successful, in order for this automated innovation to be successful, it's really rare. I haven't seen it where it just goes out to the field and then it's deployed and that's it, we'll see you later. Like, these things take multiple years, but most importantly, the founders or the core team needs to be there in the field working through that value creation, working through the problems that inevitably emerge, and how to fine tune those, and then also how to identify the additional value that makes the whole thing pay. So anyway, I covered a lot there. I mean, I'll go back into some more detail, more examples later, but that's been our experience for sure, where we've seen the most success is that real presence in the field with the commitment to a learning curve as well.
Thanks, Nishan. Tim, any captivating stories of where Agtonomy has succeeded and maybe stumbled in organics?
Yeah, well, I got a story about something really good and something really not so good as it pertains to robotics and organic crops. In addition to being the CEO of Agtonomy, I also, as Matthew alluded to, I do grow crops myself. I grow olives for olive oil, organic. I have grapes for wines. I have winery and olive mills, etc. And I also have accidentally in my career gotten into high tech. When I went to UC Davis, I accidentally took a computer course and said, wow, farming is great and ag is great, but I also like this other stuff. And so I've been a farmer as well as been in Silicon Valley my entire life, operating my farm in northern Sonoma County. It's called Trattori, which means tractor in Italian. I collect tractors. I've been building tractors. Like, there's nobody in the world who would want to build a tractor company more than me. But when I looked at my own farming operations, and this is the good part, I saw my economics kind of going upside down, starting probably 10 years ago, and I automated a lot on my farm. I mean, a lot, because I have engineering degrees and I'm a farmer. I could do that. And I was doing ag tech before the word was even a word. And I hadn't automated the field work yet, and so I built a prototype. It worked really well, and showed it to my Silicon Valley buddies, and I said, look what I built, to save Trattori farms. And, they're the ones who said, you're an idiot. It's not just about saving Trattori, it's about saving the world, and we started Agtonomy. Now, we had my own farming operation to test on. And that is critical, to echo my colleagues' comments. So we had this insanely unfair advantage by having both ag experience and tech experience and a real farm to try stuff out on. I'm pleased to say, in all of the years of prototyping and pilot running and everything, We only took out 3 vines, which, by the way, my manual team, including myself, we usually take out about 100 vines a year in manual operation. And now we're fully autonomous, and we've only taken out 3, and it was because of traction loss on a downhill slope and took out the vines. So, but it was really great to have that. And that's kind of the ultimate partnership. And it's really what my colleague said, that you really have to work together with the tech companies as growers. And also think about it as a crawl, walk, run kind of thing. And I'll get to the really bad story here in a second. So, you don't want to just say, I want everything to be automated. You really have to think about your growing operations and think about and prioritize the tasks that can be automated. Now, I focus on permanent crops, and permanent crops are a little bit different, where the harvest cost is not as high as pre- and post-harvest. So there's a lot of tasks that you do, especially now that no-till farming is pretty pervasive in some of these permanent crops. So mowing is a big task, right? And that's a repetitive thing that can be automated. There's spraying, which is huge, and then there's things like underplant cultivation, which is very difficult for a human to do, driving a tractor 4 miles an hour and actuating 6 levers at the same time, trying to put these weed knives directly under. So with now computer control, we can do that much better, which is actually really good for the entire organic industry, I'll call it. Because before, doing multiple passes with humans with these kind of underplant cultivators was just not economically feasible. But if now you can operate it autonomously, it makes sense from a pass perspective and from an efficacy perspective of the actual tools themselves. So, getting back on track, lots of partnerships are key to making robotics work. Recently, and I had to scan the room, by the way, to make sure they weren't here in the room, but recently a large enterprise grower, wonderful people, great operations and everything. I'm not going to tell you what kind of crop, because that might give it away, but they said, we want to try, we've got these, 20,000 acres, and we scanned things, and we said, oh yeah, we can operate fully autonomously in these 4,000 acres. And they said, no, we want you to start here in these 50 acres. And these 50 acres had like 10-foot headland space. The crop was so bushy, a human couldn't even see through it. And you can't start at the run areas, the moral of the story. We told them it was going to fail, and obviously it did fail. So it's really about the partnership, like my colleagues have emphasized, with the grower and the technology companies, and really thinking about it from what is automatable first, prioritizing those tasks, and then crawl, walk, run. Because, newsflash, all these robotics that all of us are creating are not perfect yet, right? And humanoids do not exist yet that can operate in these fields. So those are kind of two ends of it, is having extreme partnership like your own farm, as well as being put to the test on something that even a human couldn't do. Is a recipe for failure.
If I can just add on to that, is I love that you brought up the crawl, walk, run, because we talking about something that didn't go well is we really wanted to automate the harvest of green onions, and it was before my time, so what is this, like early 2000s, and we didn't crawl, walk, run, we sprinted, and we were like, yeah, we're gonna go all in on this project, and that's a great way to grow broke. So that did not work out for us, and we had to just pivot our whole green onion program back to Mexico. And recently, we were working with L5 Automation on a project to kind of break down do exactly what you said, break down the process of harvesting green onions, which if you don't know green onions, they are extremely labor intensive. You go and you pull them all out, and then you got somebody sorting them and then bunching them and putting rubber bands around them, and sizing them and trimming they've cut off the tops, they're trimming the roots. It's 300 people in the field doing this. So we'd love to cut down on that labor. And so we started a project where we were just kind of looking at every component of it. And then as we looked at every component, what could we automate that would save us? And so we were trying to look, the next phase of the project, which we haven't taken it on yet, would be, we think we could do, kind of try to cut down on labor just by starting with sorting. And that's, where we would start, and then if we can get it to be automatically sorted, then we could go through the different processes. There is some stuff out there to put like rubber bands on the product. It just, again, all this stuff moves very slowly, and we have to move a little faster than it does. But just talking about crawl, walk, run, we learned that lesson the hard way.
Thanks, guys. There's a theme here across everybody's comments that I think is worth highlighting, is that how important it is in this world of ag tech for startups to find a grower that's a good fit and to work with them in the field. You cannot develop innovation without access to the farm. And in this crowd, I am sure that that is not a shocker. But if you step outside of ag, where actually a lot of the ag tech innovation is coming from, it is pretty tough to get access to a farm and to find a grower like J.V. Smith, to find a grower within the Driscoll's network who's willing to do that, right? And you guys both do that really well. And there's many leaders in the agricultural industry that are willing to do that. That's actually one reason why I decided to make the leap from Driscoll's to Reservoir, that's essentially what we do, right? Reservoir did surveys of startups. I think hundreds of startups were interviewed. And there was some interesting statistics that from first funding to the time the startups had secure access to a farm was just shy of a year, right? So that's a year of time that our industry is missing out on that innovation, right? This innovation does take years. So what if you can tighten that up by 1 year, right? So that's something that Reservoir does and a lot of growers. Okay. What is working really well? Name the companies, explain what they do. This is for Kristen and Nishan. And describe why that is so useful in your crops and specifically in organics.
Okay, there's one example I'll talk about that we're excited about right now. Trick Robotics is a company that's now based in Santa Maria, working in strawberries, and it's technology that is pretty well understood. We have a challenge in conventional and organic strawberries, which is powdery mildew. Some varieties are more susceptible than others. Some times of the year are more susceptible than others. But control is a problem, and especially in organics with fewer materials to work with, it's a real challenge. And so there's UVC lighting. That UVC lights have proven to be effective. It's used in other parts of the world, in tabletop farming, and in strawberries, it just hasn't been done here. And so Adam Stager founded a company called Trick Robotics to go work on this. And he's been, in my opinion, an example of what it looks like to go out and be in the fields with growers. Find a couple growers that really are, have a sense of belief and want to work with you on it. And then, get to work in the field and then iterate from there. And so, we're now a few years into this, or the growers who are working with Adam are a few years into this effort with Trick, and every year it's been improving. It's now at the point where growers who are adopting it are really excited about the plant health that they're seeing. And so the value proposition is going to come in terms of yield. There is some savings from being able to reduce certain inputs, but then there's some additional cost that's mostly offsetting. We'll see how all that shakes out, but the real opportunity is around yield. And I think what's been really interesting is to see how it's evolved. It's definitely gone through some of the hiccups, like the field wasn't set up properly to drive a machine through long runs. So there had to be some adaptation on the grower side. The technology itself, first was mounted on old decommissioned harvest assist machines, which moved and had variable distance to the plants. All that had to be evolved. The light frequency had to be dialed into the right conditions. All of that had to happen. But what's been also really interesting is that, and I think that happened because Adam was committed and he was like really there in the fields. Relentless was the word that one of the growers used to describe his presence, just relentless, seeking value and figuring out how to adapt. One thing that's been cool is that it started with the powdery mildew question, but then went from there to say, well, let's actually work with Cal Poly and the Strawberry Center to understand the impact on spider mites, which are another pest, and Persimmilus, which is our predator organic solution to deal with those. And so what's the light's impact going to be on those? From there, they also were able to say, well, if we're going to make these passes with this platform, let's adapt a bug vacuum into between the wheel well, which can actually improve the efficacy of the bug vacuum. That was also a step up that the Strawberry Center at Cal Poly had made, and so Trick adapted that onto the machine. And then that work's ongoing to figure out, like, where's the next aspect of value going to come from? Research into botrytis control to really try to get a feel for that. I will say, it's still in a learning process. You have a few growers who are really excited about it, other growers who respect those growers who are looking over the fence and saying, oh, when's this going to be ready for me to jump into it? But there's a lot of excitement around it. I was looking for numbers. The numbers are, like, it would be nice to tell a story, say, okay, those ranches are X% above our average consistently. And I don't have that yet. It's not a single variable experience, organic farming. And so there's so many other factors at play, and it does come down to the grower's confidence in the company and the grower's confidence in the founder and the team and the grower's confidence in the data on the specific efficacy. Because once you've already converted, you don't have a perfect check to say, okay, I did this block with this and I did this block without. Even if you had that, there are going to be soil differences or hot spots of pests. It's really hard to get a perfect comparison. So the adoption is really coming down to, does that grower believe in the data of the specific efficacy? Does that grower believe in the company and the founder, and believe that he can see a difference in the plants? And so we're pretty excited about where that's going right now.
Kristen, you mentioned Nico, but anything else you want to share about a big win you guys have had with ag tech?
We do this ourselves, so not exactly a specific company, but using the drones for sprays has worked out really well for us. Generally, we're replacing, like, rather than doing the airplanes or helicopters, using drones, and that program has done really well for us. And I know there's companies out there doing that now. I don't know exactly what drones we're using. But that one, and then also, as you mentioned, Trick Robotics that has UV light. They're not in our crops yet, but I want them to be. We use UV light for now that we have to. What's it called? Like when you disinfect the overhead water, if it's within a certain amount of days of harvest, we run it through UV light as opposed to using chemical. And it's interesting, having just been in the session before with food safety and biodiversity and the need for that, we went to the UV light because we saw that the chemical was hurting our soil. So going to the UV light instead, that's been another one that has worked really well for us.
Thanks. Tim, when you were approaching a new client, how does their client test or try or demo agtonomy? What's that process like?
Great question. As a farmer, I believe in trying before you buy, right? When you buy a tractor, at least when I've been buying tractors my whole life, whether it was the New Holland dealer or the Kubota dealer or the John Deere dealer, they would basically bring a tractor to my farm, and I would test it for a few hours, sometimes weeks, with my really good friends who are tractor dealers. And then I would make an assessment. Does it work on my operations? So I firmly believe that a grower has to try the technology in their own operations, because every operation is different, before they make a decision to buy. Knowing that, I made sure that we could structure autonomy in a way that gave that opportunity to the growers. So first of all, a word of caution. We talked about what works and what doesn't work. From an ag tech perspective, and we've seen this, and I don't know what the data is, but Matthew, maybe Reservoir can look at this data. As a grower, you really want trusted brands, you really want dealer networks, and you really want financing. And startups can't give that to you. So, we've had a lot of startups who've built robots, who've built machines, and it's so capital intensive to do that many, I'm going to say most, but it'd be a good project for Reservoir, have failed. And this year is no exception. So we believed working with trusted OEMs, original equipment manufacturers, tractor manufacturers, and bringing the technology to them, bringing physical AI to their equipment, and then allowing the growers to try that equipment first. 30 days, no questions asked. You can return it any time. And then if they like it, they don't have to buy it. They can rent it or they can lease it multiple years. And I think that model is really important to help with the adoption, kind of the on-ramping, if you will, of technology. Because, for all the growers in the audience, if I said, here's a new piece of technology, pay me $100,000 and then, use it on your ranch, you're going to say no. So I think as ag tech companies, we have to think very much like what could work in the grower's mind, how to really on-ramp them, and then do the crawl, walk, run with them.
That's a good idea. So you're suggesting when a startup is not fully fledged, not yet working through an established dealer, how do growers get financing to try, or how do startups get financing to grow?
No, I'm saying the incumbents out there, the equipment manufacturers, right? They bring three great things to us farmers. They bring a trusted brand, pick your color, right? By the way, I've learned through work at Autonomy that growers who've been very staunch certain color farmers, like they have 1,000 of those colors, they are willing to switch immediately once they see a solution work that happens to be a different color, right? So, but what I was referring to on the financing side is that the original equipment manufacturer, pick your favorite color, John Deere, Kubota, New Holland, Mahindra, you name it, right? They are trusted brands, and as growers, we can go to their dealer networks because this equipment is for the livelihood of our business. So we need the dealer, we need the parts, we need the service. Many times I I text my dealers, at night and meet them at the shop, and they open it up and I get parts, etc. That's really important for us as growers. And the third piece is basically financing, because there's no grower who pays cash for equipment unless you're really profitable at the end of the year, which doesn't happen right now during Farmageddon, as I call this era we're in. And so that, usually 0% financing, really favorable terms, can be supported by these large corporations, right? The famous colors we all know, they cannot be supported by startups. So at Autonomy, we work with those big companies, bring the technology to them, and then that equipment is basically rentable to the grower. First, guarantee, try before you buy for 30 days. We'll make it 60. We'll make it whatever is necessary, because we have these brands behind this equipment, right? And then they can rent, lease, or buy, however the grower currently likes to do that.
Yeah, that's great advice. And, with John Deere as Reservoir's first, major corporate partner, that's something that we should be thinking about.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, let's mix it up a little bit. Any lettuce growers in the room? No? Okay. Oh, yes. Okay. Do you have a question from the lettuce industry for our panelists?
I really appreciated the much as we could, and it's trying to find the places where things can be the most successful. So as far as questions, I don't know about a question, but I really appreciated that commentary from the panel that you have to find a place where the technology can be successful, and then try to expand from there.
Thank you. Okay. Who else has got a good question? We'll just sit quietly until somebody's got one. There we go.
So when you guys are looking to adopt new technologies, is this the company coming to you guys to introduce the technology, or are you guys going to the company to then try out the technology, or how does that communication line usually work?
For us, within berries, I've seen it happen both ways. There are certain issues where we say this is just a major issue for us. Like an example is spotted wing Drosophila, which is a fruit fly that can deposit eggs in an underripe fruit. Like that's a huge problem for us. And so we put up the signal and saying, anybody who's interested in working on this, you will definitely find people interested in working with you. Harvest assist machines is another example for strawberries. There are models which have existed for a long time and have met barriers for various reasons. If there's someone with a fresh idea and wants to get into that space, we know growers are going to have interest in partnering. And then there are other ideas that have just come out of an adjacent industry or a different crop, where when there are companies that are connected enough, they say, hey, I have this, it might work for you. In order for that to happen, I think there just needs to be a really strong connection and understanding. Like, I'm really excited about Reservoir coming and being present in Salinas, where they're going to be exposed to growers. So if something's working, it might actually be able to be adapted to something else, and there's something existing that we can take advantage of. Because some of the wins are smaller wins, and those are really important. They're not something that we've called for and said. Powdery mildew actually was an example of that. That was not on our top 5 list of priorities, but it's an issue, and there was a technology available, and someone connected enough to say, hey, this might work for you, and then you found an audience.
Which one for you specifically? Like, how are you then influencing your growers below you? Like, are you then recommending the technology that's out there, or how does that go?
Yeah, in a company, within Driscoll's, working with so many independent growers, we actually sit with the growers to say, what are our shared top priorities? And then as we have people dedicated to scanning the landscape, Matt was one of those, a really good one of those. And as ideas come out, that we're immediately connecting with our growers and saying, hey, is this interesting to you? If it is, we will dedicate some of our resources to connect with a grower, to go much deeper on it, deepen some of the efficacy studies. We'll use our resources to pull other growers to that ranch. So on a Saturday, you might see 15 growers looking at that trick robotics, or on a Tuesday night or something like that, to see how that works. And so we'll pull growers together so that they can all see it, and ideally we move faster that way.
I want to add to that from the other side, from an ag tech company 3 years ago, it was 99.9% us reaching out to growers. Last year, it was 90%, 10%. This year, it's like 30% inbound. And I think there's just a lot of reasons for that. Number one, obviously the climate has changed in, immigration policies and other things that are affecting labor. But also word of mouth has spread, because in our industry, we talk to each other and we watch each other, and what works, we all start to move in that direction. What doesn't work, we move away from that. And so I think, we're just seeing the beginning of, I'll call it more, bigger scale of these kind of technologies coming into organic growers and other kinds of growers. And that's sort of changing the equation, where I think it's going to be even more in the future coming from the growers to the tech companies.
Cool. Okay. So we got one more question, and I got a wrap up, and then we're done. Okay, hit it.
Excuse me, weed control. What's working? What's not? What's missing? What's needed? And where are we?
Weed control. What's working? What's not working? Where are we?
Well, so what's working, we're also using I know Nico is getting into some weed control. We also use the carbon robotics. Those ones are really good, especially when you're talking organics, because obviously you don't have to go switching out the chemicals and those things. They're tough because they're slow, and then the high price point. So we've kind of had to change the way we internally budget the farm and kind of take the cost of the equipment out there and then try to pay it off with savings potentially. And that was a learning curve for us. But what we're seeing and the things we've done for weed control is it's hard to get that last 2 inches around the crop. And then, of course, there's all the smart cultivators, too, that do really well. The problem is you can only get into the crop when it's only so big, right? You can't get into those last stages of the crop as it gets bigger. And then those last 2 inches of the crop is, you can probably do it with the carbon robotics, but you'd have to slow it down way too much. So we have to ignore that. We still have to get into with the crews for those. So that's our experience and what we've used with weeding. And the not organic, but the eco robotics has been great with broccoli. And it was when we were at the Yuma Ag Tech Summit a couple weeks ago, we talked about the loss of dactyl and how it took the weeding budget from $50 an acre to $200 an acre. And a great opportunity where eco robotics came in and is kind of helping to solve that problem.
Nice. Okay. Nishan, what's one breakthrough for berries that you would love the ag tech world to make a priority?
I mean, certainly the biggest one is automated harvesting. That's what, is the moonshot. That is, further out there. And so after that, then you really get into, there's not just one thing. And that's the challenge, I think, for us is there's not just a single thing. Everything that we can do to surround excellent farming is so important. And so there are some solutions that are going to have multiple points of advantage, like what we're seeing Trick Robotics develop, where they can attack multiple issues with a single platform that's moving. When we look at fertility and pest control in organics, those become two of the most important aspects that are the biggest barriers to elevating yield. If you're going to improve harvest cost without automating it, the first and most important thing you do is grow better plants and grow a better canopy, and that is going to improve your harvest speed, and it's going to improve your cost per unit. And so everything that we can do to surround pest and disease and fertility in organics, I think is just absolutely critical that we advance in these coming years.
Okay, great. We're going to wrap it up. The last thing I want to say is I see a handful of startups here, of course. Agtonomy, Tim. I see Carbon. I see BHF. I see AgTom. Can all the startups raise your hands? Oh, wow, way more than I thought. That's awesome. Okay, I hope all the growers here go harass these guys to learn what they're working on and just shower them with advice, right? Okay, thank you, everybody.